And speaking of franchises that do turn out to be very important to their fans, uh, there's a new He-Man and the Masters of the Universe series out on Netflix. This one was headed by Kevin Smith, and I have to tell you, it's a the narrative surrounding this series is an absolute hot mess. Now, interestingly enough, I'm not that big a fan of He-Man. As a matter of fact, as a 40-year-old male grown-up, more or less, I have a hard time saying that word with a straight face. I think that there is an interesting little kind of cultural disconnect. In the sense, it's kind of astonishing to me that could ever be, that could actually be the name of a character in the first place. So I didn't even really connect with that franchise all that much as a kid myself. I know that a lot of people did, but I mean, when I was growing up, I didn't even really have a lot of the toys. As a matter of fact, I could think of maybe 2 He-Man figures that I ever had, and I believe that they were both villains. I think that I had the Skunk Man, I think that I had the Beast Man, and then there was another villain that they brought in at a certain point after Skeletor. Not Skeletor, but the other guy who kind of became a lead villain at one particular point. It was almost like, if I remember this clearly at all, I think maybe he was Skeletor's boss. Man, I should have researched this. I should have researched this detail before recording, but it's too late now. We're already in the middle of it, and as a matter of fact, you can see, the sun is just about completely down. I'm about to be sitting here in the dark, so I don't want to dwell on that very long. But I did sit down today and actually watch all 5 episodes of the current Masters of the Universe series, and I have to say that I personally think that some of the hysteria around it is absolutely mystifying. You have all sorts of people that are lashing out at Kevin Smith and saying that, oh, he lied to the fans, and that the new He-Man series isn't really about He-Man. And I have to say that, personally, I disagree with that sentiment. There are a lot of people who are saying that it's not about He-Man, it's about Teela. And so there's almost like this, this kind of recurring theme that a lot of people think that a lot of these... that a lot of these revivals of various old, TV series and cartoons and whatnot, are basically, assaults on masculinity. And in this particular case, I mean, there is an arguable feasibility to that, because when you take something like He-Man, really, what does He-Man represent? But I mean, almost like this. This pinnacle of masculinity. And so you take him and you kind of push him to the background of this series, almost basically by killing him off. And so I think I can maybe understand how some people would see it that way. But the one thing that I do not agree with these people about is that they say that, oh, well, this new Masters of the Universe series, it's not even about He-Man. Oh, it's the Teela show. And Teela does play a very big role in this series, but I do not agree with this idea that just because they kill He-Man off, that this show is no longer about He-Man. As a matter of fact, I think that the show is about He-Man in the sense that it's about, this world, this fictional world, Eternia. It's about what is becoming of this world, Eternia, without He-Man there to protect it, as shown through the eyes of Teela. That's kind of your lens that you see it through. So personally, no, I do not agree that Kevin Smith lied to the fandom when he said that this show was all about He-Man. And once you kind of dispense with that particular complaint, I mean, everything else becomes just this, series of complaints about the character designs and, almost like, Teela's too butch. It's like, okay, well, she's a warrior woman. She's not going to look like a Victoria's Secret model. That wouldn't make any kind of sense whatsoever. Not that a show that is about a skinny kid who's able to use a magical sword to make himself, into a into a gigantic muscle man, is really obligated to make any sense. But quite frankly, I think that this is a very strange hill to die on. Now, speaking of hills to die on, one thing that I really cannot bring myself to agree with, and this is very hard for me to say because I'm a huge fan of Kevin Smith, but the way that he's responding to a lot of this fan criticism where he's alleging things like review bombing and all of this different stuff, and that that the criticism of the show is all illegitimate, that's a terrible attitude for him to take towards the people that he's counting on to make his money for him. At least in terms of like any future residuals or anything like that. I mean, for whatever work he's already done on this show, it's like, okay, he's already cashed his check and gone home. And he's going to go out and make another show about dick and fart jokes and gay jokes the way that he always has. Kevin Smith, he's going to be okay, but he's targeted all of these disgruntled fans in a way that is just not going to be helpful in terms of how to put this fandom back together again once all of this is over. Who knows? I might view it all very differently if I was emotionally invested in this, but really, I'm just not. It was an interesting enough show. If you were a fan of that cartoon in the 80s, I think you might enjoy it. I mean, I enjoyed it well enough for the for what basically amounted to like a 2.5-hour investment of time. But as it pertains to the fan outcry, it is not impossible for two different groups of people to be wrong. As a matter of fact, I find it to be shockingly common these days, and I think this is another example of that.